So welcome everyone in this second workshop of the 2021 Small Wiki Toolkits in the Indian context. And in this workshop, we're going to learn how to use bots, especially how to use Pywikibot for automated tasks on Wikipedia and other Wikimedia projects. And for this, we are joined by Joaquin Oltra Hernandez from Spain. He's a he's a staff developer advocate with the Wikimedia Foundation, and yeah, he's gonna teach us how to use Pywikibot especially. So over to you, Joaquin. And if anyone has any questions, just put them in the chat. Feel free to stop us at any time. And if anyone needs any translation help, also please ping in the chat, and we'll take it. So thank you, and over to you, Joaquin.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, depending where you are. We're going to be discussing, as Satip said, this is an introduction to bot development. It's a deep topic that it's full of deep rabbit holes, right? So we're going to first get a lay of the land to see what we all know and what we want to do, because that's very important to know what to dig into. We may have very different backgrounds and knowledge levels. So if at any point you have any questions, as he said, put them in chat. Feel free to interrupt. It's always okay. So depending on our background, the workshop will be a bit different, and we can shape it to be whatever we need. Right? I have a structure in mind, and we'll see it in a second. But just so you know that it can be, this is not going to be a lecture. We just have to see. So we can talk about it, we can discuss it, and we can change direction at any point, right? A disclaimer, I'm not a bot development expert. I'm a software engineer, and I know things about software engineering, and I've been around the wikis, and I read documentation, and I get informed, and that's how I get my knowledge. I'm not the most experienced bot developer, right? For a more advanced session, we probably would want to get a few bot developers from the wikis and get into more advanced topics. So this is going to be the introductory session, and then at some other point we can do another one. So to get started, here's the agenda. This is a suggestion how we can spend our time, something that I have prepared. As I said, we can at any point split off and do something else, okay? So first we're going to discuss a little bit who we are. I don't know any of you, and there's a few things that I would like to know, where your background, if you're an editor or programmer. We'll see a few questions here as a suggestion, and you can feel free to answer or not. I think maybe keeping a queue in chat for people to present themselves. I think one important thing of these workshops as well is to get to know other people with the same interests, so that you can connect and work together on things later, or support each other, right, depending on your background and your knowledge. So I think that's an important first step. Then there's a little bit of an introduction of what's a bot, in case, depending on the level that we have, we'll see if we go through this very fast or a bit slower, and open for questions. And when to write a bot and other alternatives to making automated tasks that aren't writing a bot. So before teaching you how to, I want to teach you when not to. And then there's a little bit of writing a bot with Pywikibot, a little bit of Python, a little bit of using Pywikibot in an environment at the cloud services. And after we see how to write automated tasks, finally, we'll have considerations about when to write a bot. To get started, if you can please write in chat if you want to present yourself, what's your name, if you're an editor, if you know how to program and what level of programming you have, if you know Python, and if you're already running any tools, and what you would like to learn in the workshop. Those things would be very useful to guide it.
Yeah, just to reiterate, so everyone, can you please use the chat or directly in the Etherpad, the link which Jayaprakash shared, and I'm sharing it again. So either go to the Etherpad or in the chat directly. Just introduce yourself. What's your name? If you're an editor, like if you already know some programming or Python, and if you have developed any tools or running any tools already, and what are you hoping to learn here in this workshop? So we already have, for instance, in the Etherpad, so Jayaprakash was one of the organizers here. He's a MediaWiki developer himself. He's developed many tools. Yeah, you don't need to go. I only see 9 people in the Etherpad, or 10 now. That's okay. It's increasing, 11. Cool, yeah. So I think we can just use the Etherpad then. So yeah, everyone, just join Oh, and then Sushant has raised his hand, and I'm guessing he would like to just introduce himself. Yes, Sushant, go ahead.
Just for reference, all of the slides and the materials that I'm going to show will be posted, and we can post them later in the workshop page and share them. So everything will be available afterwards, because there's some links and things like that for reading later. So
Perfect. Okay, we have a comment in the chat as well. I'll just copy it into the Etherpad. We have some like very specific asks as well. For instance, like someone wants to learn, a noob wants to learn how to add categories to articles automatically, add them. So that's interesting. The discoverer, I don't know the person, but yeah, they're an editor, no Python, and they haven't developed or run any tools and want to set up and run simple bots like welcome.py or archivebot.py.
yeah, I saw also the comments on the talk page, and I see there's already a fabricator task talking to the Pywikibot developer, and that's a great way to go. So that's great job, and it's a great way to start with it. Cool. So in the interest of time, I see there's a variety of backgrounds. There's some people that have a little bit more experience. There's people that are just editors and don't know how to program. So there's going to be a little bit of information for everyone. I think I'm going to continue, but if you can add what wikis you work on the Etherpad, I think that's going to be useful. If you are an editor and you are on a certain wiki, you can look for technical people that work on the same wiki. And the other way around, if you're a programmer and you want to build tools, you can look at editors that are in the list of participants that work on your own wiki as well, and you can talk to each other. So that's going to be very valuable connections. So is it okay if we move on?
Yes, definitely. And people can like keep on adding information about themselves. That's okay.
So what is a bot? Here's a very useful resource. It's on English Wikipedia, so it may be longer than it will be for some other smaller wikis, but it has a very extensive documentation from what is a bot, how it works, working with the API, what's the process of developing a bot. Of course, the English Wikipedia process is going to be more complicated than it can be in smaller wikis. Some guidelines if your wiki is bigger or you want to make some processes for your wiki. And then there's examples of the tools for different programming languages. So some of the information is based on this page, but it's a general good read if you're trying to establish a bot process for your wiki. So robots are automated processes that interact with the Wikimedia projects as if they were human editors. So when you go to a wiki and you look at the history of a page, you're going to see the contributions of a bot as well. Bots can automate tasks and they can perform them much faster than humans. You can configure a bot to go slower, but generally they can be very, very fast. Computers are very fast. So for example, if you have a simple task that you want to do, but you have to perform it a lot of times, right? Like you have to add a template to all of the pages in a category, for example, because you want to do some processing or show something on the page, and the category has 1,000 pages or even more. So those are great use cases for things like a bot. For making a bot requires at least some prior programming experience. So learning programming is a little bit hard, but it can definitely be done. There's also other complementary skills, like using a command line interface. If you've never used that one, it's like a prompt where you write, you hit enter, and you do things with it. Knowing a programming language, we're going to focus on Python, but there are many others, and you can write bots in any programming language. And you can also, if you want to deploy your bot, you're probably going to have to learn SSH and a little bit of Linux commands. All of these things can be complicated, but they all can be learned with time and effort. There are a lot of resources online, and the community is big, and you can always ask for help. And it's very doable. So don't get discouraged. I'm just giving you a lay of the land. Any questions about what a bot is?
No, I don't think so. Like, yeah.
So we're going to talk now about when do we write a bot and when do we use alternative tools. A bot is autonomous. It's a program that runs on itself. There are other ways of making automated tasks. and we're going to see about them. Maybe you really don't need to write a bot, and it's more complex for what you want to do. Sometimes it's easier to just find a bot that does what you want to do, and it's maybe operating on a sister wiki, on some other project, and then just asking to the maintainer, hey, can you install the bot in my wiki? So if you only have periodic requests, like sometimes you need to run a job that does a lot of things, or maybe you are uncomfortable with programming, request a bot job from an existing bot, or find a technical collaborator that can build the task for you and run it one time or whenever you need it. Sometimes it's not worth going through the hassle. The Small Wiki Toolkits has a small list of bots here that you can visit. Let's have a look. These are, some of them are very big bots, some of them are smaller. And of course, this list, Small Wiki Toolkits, is meant for helping smaller wikis use tools. So if you find, I'm going to ask you, if you find a bot that you install on your wiki or you build it on your wiki, then please write on the top page and suggest adding the bot to the list so that other wikis can benefit from the knowledge that you acquired. There's also other tools that you can use as an editor. They are available for anyone. Depending on the wiki, they have a different process. For example, there's AutoWiki Browser. I'm not sure if you know about this one. It's a program. This one is for Windows. There's other versions that run in other operating systems. And it's basically gives you a user interface where you can get pages by title or randomly or by using a search and make a list of pages. And then you can perform actions on it. So you can automatically add a piece of wiki text to all of the pages in the list, or add a category, or remove a category, things like that. It's a very, very well-featured automated editor. So this may be worth checking out. And in other wikis, it requires explicit permissions to enable it for a user, so that, because you can edit a lot of articles at the same time and really make a mess. So it needs to be handled with care. But there are tools like this that can be very useful for making automated tasks without building a bot. There are other tools in this English Wikipedia page, for example. I'm sure there's many other pages, but here there are general editing tools, ways to build bots, not only Pywikibot. There's even a AutoWiki browser, which is like an AutoWiki browser based on Pywikibot. So lots of tools. It's worth doing a little bit of research. Any question about using tools without building a bot? Okay. All right. So for making a bot, there are a number of frameworks. As you saw before, the list of programming languages was long, and I told you can use anything. I've seen bots written in awk, which is a very esoteric Linux tool, and people write bots in anything. The most popular and common is usually Pywikibot, also known as PWB. If you see PWB, it means Pywikibot. And the web page with the documentation is on MediaWiki.org in manual Pywikibot. Here you can see the page has been translated to many languages. Feel free to translate them to yours. That's a super useful contribution. And then here you can see like beginner documentation about what it is, how to install it. We're gonna go through some of these things later. Writing a basic script, like this page has all of the information that you can need. And we will go through some of these in a little bit. So Pywikibot is written in Python. As I saw, some of you have experience in Python, some of you don't. Python is so I'm going to explain a little bit. Python is a programming language. It's a scripting language, and it's very widely used in many different areas, and from beginners to science to machine learning, and then web applications. So it's super useful, and it has a lot of batteries included libraries. If we go to the website, you can see this is what the programming language looks like. We'll look at it a little bit more. And there is a lot of documentation, and there's a lot of community here, and tutorials and books. The programming language has been around for a very long while. So there's a lot of resources for learning the programming language. I'm not going to be teaching you more than a few basics of Python, So if you want to learn the language, I definitely encourage you to go on your own and learn a little bit how to program in Python. It's not, programming can be difficult, right? So it would be a whole nother series of workshops on its own. So for example, this is a line of Python. We want to print something on the screen. We call the print function. We call functions with parentheses. And this is a string of text, just some text. You put it between quotes, and then it will show on the screen the message that we just show. This is just a comment, so nothing very useful. Here's how you do some math in Python, for example, this is the division, this is the power, 2 to the power of 3, this is the float division, and this is the integer division. So just some basic examples. Here's another small example. Here's making a list. You make lists with brackets, making a list of fruits, and then I want to make them uppercase. So, for every fruit in the fruits list, I'm going to make them uppercase. This is calling a method. It's like a function, but that it is applied to a piece of data. And then in the end, we have a list of the fruits, but with uppercase. And here's another example where we have a list of numbers and we want to get the multiplication of all of them. So we start with 1, and for each number in numbers, we multiply the current number in the list that we're looking at by the product that we are multiplying. And then in the end, we print it, and here's the multiplication. So just some basic examples. As I said, if you know some Python, this will probably be obvious. If you don't, it will be confusing. I encourage you to go look at the programming guides and tutorials. There are many, so I'm sure you can find in your language and in English everywhere on the web. There's videos, there's a lot of free resources for learning Python. I like this guide. It's like a cheat sheet. So you know a little bit of programming, you want to know a little bit of an overview of what to do with Python. This website is kind of cool. Learn X in Y minutes. In this case, X is Python. And here you have just the syntax of how you do things very, very directly. So like Booleans, for example, are true and false with capital T and F. So it's a little bit different from other programming languages. And this is a good cheat sheet if you want to check how to do something in Python and you know a little bit of programming. Any questions about Python, programming languages, that kind of thing?
No, I think it's been pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some of this would be for someone who just doesn't know any programming language at all. So they would be thinking, okay, where are we? But yeah, let's see if we can still teach them some basics. Yeah,
definitely. And you'll get the chance to play with Python a little bit later without having to install anything in your computer right now. That's when we're going to use what I said pause before, and I'll explain a little bit later. So, just feel free to, if something is over your head, we'll have the materials available later and you can dig in later and you can ask questions later as well. And feel free to play with what we're going to be looking at. So before we get into the actual tutorial, there's a little bit of the community and support. This is a couple of the channels that are available. The Pywikibot IRC channel. It's a little bit noisy because it shows the commits to the Pywikibot repository, but it's there and you can ask things and people are hanging out in there, the maintainers. And there's also the mailing lists. For example, the Pywikibot mailing list. If you go to lists.wikimedia.org, you can subscribe here and get emails and also ask your own emails, ask your questions via email over here. If we go to the communications page on the Pywikibot documentation, which is here, there's a link here in Get Help on other support channels. So when we click that, we get here. And here you can see where the code is. There's a link to the repository here. And you can see as well how to report the bug. There's a form that will open a task in Fabricator. For example, if I have a problem or a bug with Pywikibot and something's not working, you need to have a Fabricator account, but you can post a task and it will be posted in the Pywikibot Fabricator project, and the maintainers look at it and answer questions. And There's also the mailing list. There are a few. If you develop a bot in Pywikibot and you're running it in production on the wikis, I very highly suggest that you subscribe to Pywikibot Announce. If there are breaking changes or important updates to the Pywikibot framework, they are posted to Pywikibot Announce. It's very low traffic, but it is very important to be subscribed. So if you do develop a bot and you run it in production, please do subscribe to this mailing list so that you can be directly in touch with the maintainers when they have something important, so that your tools don't break or you know about what the breaking changes. So that's the community side. The main maintainer is XQT. He's very responsive and a great person. So for installing Pywikibot, looking at the documentation like we did before, here, install and configure Pywikibot. We go here, and we have a few options presented here, right? This page specifically, installation, is about installing Pywikibot in my own machine, right? That's not what we're gonna do today because this is an introductory course. For developing a bot, a serious bot, I would encourage that you install Python and Pywikibot locally, and you run things on your computer. You can also use POS, of course, but if you run things locally, it's going to be a little bit easier if you are getting into programming. Easier to deploy later. I mean, it's not easier than POS. It's not going to be. The easiest way to get started with Pywikibot is on POS. POS is a service from the Wikimedia Cloud Services. It gives you a server where you can have programs running, and it has some nice things like a web shell where you can have a terminal without installing anything locally, and host your files and all of those things. We'll see a little bit more about POS in a second. Finally, there's also a tutorial if you want to deploy your bot on hosting. The Wikimedia Cloud Services also provides web hosting for tools and programs that are going to benefit the Wikimedia communities. So Toolforge, for example, is a platform as a service project where you can get some hosting and you can run your bots there in a continuous way and always running. So we will see later a little bit of that page too. So we're going to get started with POS. Let's have a look at the POS page. As we said, POS is a web shell, and it enables Jupyter notebooks, which is a kind of a interactive programming method, and all of it works from your browser. So just from the browser, we're going to be able to run a shell and have some files and run some Pywikibot. Okay, we will see a little bit more in a second, and we're going to follow this tutorial, which is in the documentation. It's here, running Pywikibot on POS. Right, this is what we're going to be following in a second. So if we click on that, it's manual Pywikibot/POS, and this is the tutorial that we're going to be following altogether. If you don't feel comfortable, I'm going to be following the tutorial too in the screen. So feel free to follow the screen and ask any questions. And if you do feel comfortable, I think it would be nice if you follow this tutorial with this link. I'm going to be showing the tutorial on the screen too, in case you want to shuffle tabs. And I'm going to be showing what I do as well. And I want to answer any questions or any problems that you find in the process. Should I paste the link in the chat, Satip?
Yeah, sure. We have been like adding most of the links. Yeah, I just shared it in the chat.
Brilliant. All right. So I'm going to put this here in the side. Let's see if I can make it a bit easier to read. Okay. So the first step is to have a Wikimedia account. I'm sure we all do. So ensure that you're logged into your Wikimedia account, and you can open test.wikipedia.org, and that's where we're going to be testing our bots. So if I open test.wikipedia.org.
So there is a feedback in the chat. Can you like enlarge on your screen, like zoom a bit more, because it's difficult to read.
Let's see. I'm not sure, like this, for example, or more.
Yes, I think this should be good. Like, and the other window as well.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it in mind. If I forget to increase the font somewhere, please let me know.
Yeah.
Cool. So once you get to test.wikipedia.org, if you're not logged in, log in there, and then you should be seeing your username up here in the toolbar. I'm not sure, Satip, how should we handle waiting for people to get on with it? Should I keep moving until someone asks me to stop, or?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure how many people are actually like most of them should be on their devices, but I'm pretty sure some of them are on their mobile devices as well. So they
Right.
might not be just doing this right now.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
okay.
we can just give it a couple of seconds. Like just like take it slowly. If they're if they ask in the chat that yeah to repeat a step, we can do it. But yeah, I think like just keep on moving with a slow pace.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so this is the first step. Then we're going to launch Pause. So this is when you visit the Pause documentation, is the launch Pause link. So this is the link that's hosted here. Let me open it up in a tab, and I'll increase the size. Let me log out. Okay, so this is what you will see when you launch the Pause Hub. You have to sign in with your Wikimedia account. It says MediaWiki, but it's the Wikimedia account, the one that you used for test Wikimedia. When you click on that, it's going to take you to Meta, because the Meta is the global sign-in, and then it's going to use auth for logging you in and be able to use your account. That's why it's asking for permissions, because from Pause with your tools, you're going to be able to use your credentials to edit things on wikis. So we click Allow. I'm not sure if it's big enough, but you get a dialog. You click Allow at the bottom, and then that should redirect you back to Pause, to your dashboard or your hub. So this is the Pause web interface where you can see the files that you have. The first time that you join here, you may see a message saying starting your server, which is what I got before because I was logged in. And that may take a little bit of time. It's starting a remote server on the Wikimedia infrastructure. That's going to be your own remote Pause server. As I said before, for running things continuously forever, Pause is not a good choice because the servers are running for a long time, but they're not running all the time. So I think after a few hours, they get automatically shut down to save resource for their users. So you can definitely run tasks here, and you can run very long tasks. They just can't be running all of the time because the server shuts down automatically at some point. So here's where we're going to be doing our Pause work. So I'm going to move on to the next section, starting a terminal. We're going to be starting by looking a little bit of the command line interface, like I mentioned before. If you see CLI, if you see these, that means command line interface. So in the dashboard, here in the new button in the top right, you can see a few different options of things that we can create. The dashboard, as you can see here, is just a folder in the file system. So these are actual files. So you can create any random files that you want. And you can also create notebooks, which is what we said before with the Jupyter notebooks. We will see them in a little bit later. Right now, what we want to open is a terminal. So the last option in the menu, we're going to click it. And that will open a terminal. This is a Linux terminal from the server that we're running remotely. The URL that you see up here, this URL you can copy and you can paste it in another tab, or if you close it, you can reopen it. And as long as the Pause server is running, your own Pause server, this terminal is going to be available. A little bit about the terminal, the web interface, the copy and pasting specifically works better in Chromium browsers. So Chrome, Edge, Brave, all those browsers. If you're using Firefox, you're going to have to use the right click to paste text if you copy and paste text from the tutorial. So if you do, another thing is that you can't do Control-V for pasting text. You have to do, because Control-V is a shortcut that the command line eats, and it doesn't work. So you're going to have to use Control-Shift-V. I don't know if that makes sense. That's Control-Shift and then V for pasting. That's on Windows. If you're on a Mac, it's a command instead of control. So here we have our terminal. If you're not familiar with Linux or command lines, this is a Linux system with the command line. You can type commands here. For example, the ls command is for listing files. So as you can see here, I do have files because I've been doing things in my POS server before, but these are the files that you see on my dashboard over here. It's the same list of files. So this is the home directory in POS, and this is the files. This is where you get logged in. Other commands are cd, for example, for changing directory. So you can, if you want to go up one directory, you do ... If you want to go to a directory, you do pos, which is the directory that was there, NLS. And if you want to clear the screen, because there's a lot of text, you can do Control L, and then that will clear the screen up. You can always scroll up in a normal terminal. In pos, it just clears the buffer. So we're going to start using Pywikibot now. Pos provides an installation of Pywikibot, so you don't need to install it manually. So here, this pwb pywikibot.py, that's a script that's on the Pywikibot repository. So, for example, if we want to see where Pywikibot is installed in POS, we can use the which command that's available on Linux. And you can see that it's been provided by us, for us. Pywikibot is installed in this path. So just in case you wonder where this is coming from. And usually you run Pywikibot by doing Python 3 or Python, and then pwb.py. In the case of POS, pwb.py, it's on the path, so you can run it directly, as you can see in the tutorial here on the right. So let's follow the tutorial. We're going to log into the wikis, and that's going to be using the OAuth credentials that we put on POS. For running it locally, it's a little bit different. In the instructions on the wiki, it shows you have to generate user files with the credentials. In here, it's a lot easier to get started. So we just do pwp.py login, and then it logs you in using your Wikimedia account into the default wiki is Wikipedia test. So the one that we were before, test.wikipedia.org. If you want to change the wiki that you're going to be operating on by default, you can create a file called userconfig.py, as we can see here. There's a couple of ways of creating this file in the home directory. So in the case of POS, is /home/POS. So you can create it from the command line if you know how to use a command line editor. One that's fairly easy to use is nano. So you can do nano userconfig.py, and you open it, and here you can paste the text over here. I already have one. And here you can move with the arrow keys, and you can edit text, and you can delete text. And when you want to save, you can see here at the bottom, you can do Control X for exit. So if you do Control X, and then it asks you if you want to save, you can say yes, and then just hit enter. And that way we could change, if instead of test wiki, I want to operate on Spanish Wikipedia for me, for example, I would change the language code to ES. And that would log me in to Spanish Wikipedia. Yeah, for Firefox, I believe also right-clicking and pasting is a good way to get the text pasted. The pasting from the keyboard doesn't work on Firefox for some reason. Cool. I encourage you to try things in test Wikipedia if you're trying a bot, rather than doing it on your wiki. We will see that the scripts are very conservative. They ask you for confirmation when doing something, and they have methods for simulating what they're going to do so that they don't actually do it. But it's good to verify that what you're going to need to do works well. Any questions? Anyone stuck? Needs any help?
Yeah, there's a question about this. Yep. I think this is because this question, because when I went there, there was no text, so it was empty. So
you have to type. So The process
everything.
is, copy for example, from the tutorial, you copy this text, and then here you Control-Shift-3 and paste it. And just get it from the tutorial. That's basically my lang and family.
Yes.
There's another way to create this file, and this is specific to POS, and I'm going to show you this in a second in case you need to create other files.
Okay.
Oh,
Is there any other question?
Yes, I have a question about how to config comments. There is no language for comments. Then how do we configure the config file for comments?
Commons is a Wikimedia project, right? So I would have to check, but I believe it would probably be something like here instead of Wikipedia would be Wikimedia, and here we would do Commons.
Okay, thank you.
I would need to verify it. It's always a little bit confusing with the language codes and all those things. But there's families. The families can be Wikimedia, Wikipedia, Wikisource, Wikiversity, all of those projects. And then the language is like what you see before the domain, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. I will go to the manual page.
Yeah, and I may be wrong, so I'm sorry if this doesn't work. We can definitely find out. A little bit more about POS. As we said before, the home directory, if you type pwd, that's pwd, that's a Linux command for showing the path. This is our home directory on POS. And this is what we were seeing in the dashboard, all these files. So as you saw before, this is the user config file that we created, and it also shows on the web UI. So you don't need to use the terminal for editing this one in particular. You can just click on it, and it will open it in a text editor in the web, right? So here you can change here and say yes or whatever, and then you can save it, or you can rename or do several things with files. So you can also edit the file via the web UI instead of the terminal if you're having problems with that.
So there is a question in the chat, Joaquin. It's from Dhavalin. He's asking if we can log in as a different user. Can they configure user config.user with username?
So in the case for POS, it's going to be using, unless you manually install Pywikibot, it's going to be using your POS credentials. So you would log in, when you sign in with MediaWiki, you would log in as that other user, and then you would write the scripts or run them. For when you're running it locally, there's a script called generate user files, and I can show it here, over here. There's a file in the Pywikibot scripts called generate user files, and we can see that in the installation page. Let me open that up for a second, make it bigger. When you install Pywikibot locally, if you have Pywikibot in a folder, there's going to be this script that you can run, generate user files, and that's going to make the user file with the credentials that you're going to use to log into a wiki. So when you're running it locally in your local computer, then you can use those files for setting the credentials that Pywikibot is going to use. It's a little bit different with POS because it's doing some magic so that it's easier to log in. Yep. Any other questions? As you see, for example, in POS, we're running directly the pwb.py script, but when we're doing it locally, like it shows in the documentation, you have to run it with Python pw.py. And the reason is that in POS, the pwb.py script is put in the global path so that you can run it directly, and it's a little bit easier. So POS has a little bit of conveniences for running Pywikibot scripts, and that's why the instructions are different in POS and in the normal documentation. All right, should we move on?
Yes, sure.
All right. So the first example is going to be using one of the simpler scripts. We will have a look at the scripts that Pywikibot has. Pywikibot has basically two ways of being run. What we're doing right now is running it in the command line, and the way we do this is because Pywikibot has a lot of useful scripts built in. So if we look at the source here, this is the repository. So what you get when you download Pywikibot. There's a scripts folder. Let me make it bigger. There's a scripts folder over here. And inside these scripts, there's a a lot of useful scripts that you can run. For example, right now in the example, here on the right, we're going to run add text, and you can see here there's an add text.py. So that's when you do pwb.py and then the name of the script, what it's going to be doing is finding a Python file in the scripts folder. Cool. I'd say we figured out the commons configuration. And be very careful if we run the tasks. We don't want to vandalize the wikis. So just so you know where the scripts come from. So here for running the add text script, the add text script just adds text, as it says, to a wiki page, and you can do it above or below, at the top or at the bottom. So in this case, for example, let's do this. We're going to copy the command and paste it, but we're not going to run it yet. Let's see what it's doing. So we're calling Pywikibot with add text. We're giving it a command line argument saying put it at the top. The default is the bottom, for example, for this script. We'll see later how to know what the script does. And then we want to say it's on the top page, and the page is going to be user account, and I'm going to use my own top page. So Hernandez, WMF, that's my user account over here. So if I go to my talk page, it's empty. I go to pause, and now the text that I'm going to post is hello workshop. And the wiki text signature. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to load the page. And then usually Pywikibot shows you, when you're running it in the command line and all of these things, it's going to show you what it's going to do and ask you for what you want to do with the changes. If you want to approve them, quit, not do them, so that you can have a chance to review what the bot is going to be doing. There are command line arguments for the scripts so that they don't ask and just do what you're going to do without confirmation. And those are the ones that are useful when you're doing things on a bot automatically instead of running them with a human in front of the computer. In this case, I want to say yes for this edit that we're going to do to my talk page. It says that my page was saved. And if I come back to the wiki and I refresh, we'll see the edit was made from Pywikibot. Woo! So I would encourage you, if you can run this script and edit your talk page and add something at the top or at the bottom. And let me know if you have any problems or you're having any problems.
Yeah, it worked for me as well.
Brilliant. So if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt. I'm going to keep going slowly.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If it's English, it is okay. If it is like other languages, like Indic languages, then the page names it becomes very complicated, percentage symbol and all. So how do you enter that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
For English language, Indic languages, if we copy paste it, it's not identifying the page name correctly. For example, the Indic characters will be changed to some kind of percentage symbols and all. For each character, 4-5 symbols will come, hash, numbers, ampersand. So we have to give it in that name, or how to do?
We can try it out. If you give me a page in, we can make a page in test Wikipedia and try it out. If you give me a, the title of the page here in chat, for example, we can give it do a test. I haven't tried. I don't usually use non-English characters, so that's something definitely we can try. The title of the page is in Unicode, which are the symbols in the Hindic language, for example, and then in the URL, that's where you see the percentages and all of that, which is the URL encoding that the Discover was mentioning. So we can try those examples, for example, and see what title Pywikibot wants. If it's happy with the Unicode one, or if we have to do the user encoded one. Let's try it out. So I'm going to create a page in my sandbox. Let's see. And I'm going to call it this. I hope that's not a bad word. Okay. I'm going to create it. Say hi. All right, so the one thing that MediaWiki does is normalize the titles, changing the spaces with underscores. So that's what happened here. I'm just going to copy the name of the page like that and see what happens in the script. So we're going to change this to use this page. That's some funny characters in the terminal. We'll see. I'm going to remove the talk option and bash it enter. Okay, it seems to accept it. Let's say yes. Page edited. There we go. Yeah, so Jay is saying, write the command entirely in Notepad and then paste it all at once. Yeah, I got it from the URL here in Chrome. It may be different for other things. I'm not sure, maybe if you're getting %signs encoded, there's also, maybe that would also work with Pywikibot, I'm not sure. Let's try. There's definitely something weird going on with the command line. You can see these circles over here. So not ideal, but it does seem to work. I'm gonna paste this other one and let's see. Oh, I didn't create the page, sorry. So this is the other example. Create. So this is the other script that Balaji posted. And if I run it from the command line now, this one does mess up the command line. You see the characters are overlapping here. So if you're typing it manually, it may get crazy, the command line. So it may be better, as Jay said, to put it in a notepad and then paste it back in the command line. That's it. All right, yeah, this worked too. Cool.
Any other question? If you're trying this right now and you're struggling with any of this, please feel free to use the chat, or even you can unmute yourself and share your question.
Mm-hmm. So meanwhile, I'm going to keep going. For the scripts, if you want to see what a script is doing, there are several ways of knowing what the commands are. There's a lot of parameters for each script. They are very, very well featured. And it's important to know what they do for the tasks that you want to do. So one of the ways of doing this, I'm going to show you 3 different ways. One of the ways is to check on the command line. So you can add the -help parameter to all of the scripts in Pywikibot core, and it will give you all of the options. So you can see here a lot of text. Especially my window is very big right now, so I can't see much. One of the ways of making this easier to see in the command line is to use what's called a pager, which is like a document viewer for the command line. So if we use the vertical bar and then we type less, we're passing the output of the command to the less pager. And less is like a document viewer. So you can see now the output is at the top, and with the arrow keys, we can scroll up and down. We can search with / for page, for example, and with N, we can go forward. For example, for add text, we can see there's a search option. So you could make a search to MediaWiki and add text to all of the pages that appeared in that search. So the parameters are what make the scripts be able to operate in many different pages, like searching for a piece of wiki text, or there's usually parameters for working with categories. You can see here, for example, wanted categories. So there's always files, parameters for what the scripts will be doing. That's very, very much worth it to look at them. Other good ways of looking at what the scripts do are in the Pywikibot page. So we're going to go to the top page of Pywikibot. And here in the existing scripts link, we're going to see all of the scripts that are available. And this is documentation like from the the code, I show you the Python files, and this is documented in the wiki as well. It's actually separated by categories. So you can see here the scripts by categories of the things that they do. These scripts are super valuable. They are very, very well featured, and they are in use in the wikis. And they're also a great resource for knowing how to do things with Pywikibot. So if you want to do something, you're not sure how, try to find a script that does something similar and look at the Python code to know how it's doing what it's doing. So for example, we can see add text over here, which is the one that we were using, and a little bit of a description of what it does. And if we open it in the wiki, we can see the same documentation that we saw in the command line, but it's a little bit easier to read. For example, all of the pages in a category, you could add a text to those. And another similar script is replace, which is instead of adding text, is replacing existing text with some other text. And it also has parameters for getting the list of pages from MediaWiki search or from a category or things like that. So I think there was that question from one of the use cases, someone that wanted to add text or replace text in all of the pages in a category or something similar. These are some ways of doing that. And I said 3 places where we can see the documentation. So we saw on the Pywikibot scripts, on the wiki, we saw it on the command line, and there's also, let me find the slides. We just saw the scripts page with all of the scripts, and we can dig into that a little bit more later. And we saw the code repository on the web. And there's also this page, doc.wikimedia.org/Pywikibot. If I open this one, let me open it over here. You see doc.wikimedia.org/Pywikibot. We can go to the stable version, which is what's usually installed in POS. And I'd recommend using the stable version of Pywikibot instead of the master version. The master is in development, so it may have some break-in changes. And here you can see some other documentation. This is a little bit more for developers. So for example, if you're going to use some of the existing bots, they call it the scripts, they call them bots because they do automated tasks. We will see later about bot development. Here's the scripts reference. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. We can go to the scripts reference. And here you can see the code documentation of the different scripts. For example, here is add text, which we were just looking at. So you can open it. And you can see here the documentation. This is the documentation that exists in the Python file, but it's rendered into HTML. So it's easier to read than from the code. So you can see the description, the arguments, examples on how to use the script with some examples, adding a template to a bunch of pages in a category, for example, is right here. And the explanation about the parameters and what this does. So we've run a script. We've checked the help and how to look at what things the script does. And we've seen how to check the documentation in 3 different places. Any question about those things before we move on? Okay. So the tutorial continues. We can have a look. I think it's worth moving on to using Pywikibot from Python rather than continuing with the command line. I think we've done a little bit of this. You can feel free to continue this tutorial, the pause tutorial on Pywikibot. It has an example, for example, of replacing old links to new links. For example, here in the Encyclopedia Britannica, they changed the URL to include a www. So here's an example, for example, using the list pages script to check a list of pages that contain certain criteria so that you can see what pages have the text that you want. In this case, it's checking for pages with a link to this other website. And then it's using the replace script that I mentioned before. For example, in this case, it's saying which project it's going to operate on with the language parameter here. And you can see it uses a simulate parameter, so it doesn't actually do the changes because this is going to be a bunch of edits. Always, before running a bot, you should be checking with the wiki that you're going to run a bot on to see if they have any kind of process for automated edits. For example, in English Wikipedia, it's forbidden unless it's approved by a process in the community. So before doing automated edits on a wiki, please check with the community to see if there are any guidelines that you have to follow. And in this case, you can see that it used the replace thing. These are the parameters for getting the list of pages, the same ones that you saw on these pages. And then it was going to replace this URL with the one with www, and it does all the edits there. So we're going to move on to the second part of the tutorial, which is using actually Python for using Pywikibot. So move down to the inside Pywikibot section. If that sounds right, if you want to do some more command line, I'm happy to run through those. Any thoughts?
Nothing particular, I would say. Yeah, let's continue and like go there, right? I'm just since I'm also new to this, like I don't know what's going to be different there, like inside Pywikibot. So yeah, let's check it out. But yeah, I think it's just for time's sake. I think it's important to give also an overview of how to use Pywikibot from Python. There was a few people that had some Python knowledge, other people that wanted to learn Python as well. And this is going to be a little bit more of developing a new bot rather than using the existing ones. I think it's giving you the tools and the places to look for the existing bots and what they do and how to configure them to do things. And of course, as you saw, like there's a lot of scripts and they have a lot of parameters. So it's a matter of looking for the scripts, looking at what they do, how you can configure them, and figuring out how to make them do what you want. This is the other side that I think we should cover at least a little bit, so that people know how to work with it. Cool. So let's move on to this part. Let's go back to our plus home. So we're going to close our terminal here, and we're again in our folder. So here we're going to use a Python notebook the ones that we referred before. We're going to click on New, and then click Python 3. As you can see, you can create also notebooks in Bash or R. So if you are an adventurous programmer, you can go ahead. So I'm going to click Python 3, and it's going to open the notebook. This is what's called a notebook. Notebooks they are public. So if you get the link with the public link, you can actually share the output of the things that you've been doing with other people, which is very useful. So a general introduction to notebooks, they have cells. This thing you see highlighted in green is a cell. So here, for example, we can type a number 5. And if we hit Shift Enter, it will evaluate the cell and give me a new cell below. If we want to evaluate the cell without creating a new one, we hit Control Enter. So we want to change this to 6. We can hit Control Enter, and it will evaluate only this cell and give me the result. The in is where you wrote some code, and out is the output of that code. And the number that you see here is when something was evaluated. So for example, if I write here, hello, and I hit Control Enter, you can see a 3 because this got evaluated in 2nd place, and then this got evaluated in 3rd place. So you can program here and get the results intermediate. So it's a very nice way to iteratively try some Python code and do something with it. Another very quick thing, you can change the type of a cell. You can see here, there's a dropdown with different types of cells. Basically, I would recommend either code or Markdown. Markdown is a text markup similar to wiki text. It's a little bit different. For example, if I change the type of this one to Markdown, I can type here, hello, and then bold, for example, in Markdown is with 2 asterisks. And that's a little bit of a preview. And the difference is that when I evaluate this cell, it's going to render the Markdown rather than give me input and output, because Markdown is like content and code is just code that's going to be run. So for example, if I am in the first cell, I can insert a cell above. And here I'm going to change the type to Markdown, and I'm going to write a header. Headers in Markdown are with a pound symbol. And we're going to say basic Python. Control Enter, and it renders the header. As we saw before, we can insert below.
We can print something. And here you can do all of the Python things that we saw before in the tutorial, or if you're learning Python from a tutorial, you can try them out over here. You can see the order of how things got evaluated, 2, 4, 5, etc. If you do something, you can run here your code, and then you can share it. If you click the public link, you will get a render of your session, your programming session, and you can share this link with someone. You can give it to a friend, to another programmer. Hey, I'm having troubles. This is what I was trying. It's very useful for helping others. In the past documentation, there's also documentation about how to copy a notebook into your own notebook. We're not going to cover this right here. It's in the past documentation. All right, so let's move on to the tutorial on the Pywikibot pause page. Pywikibot is available. There's a number of standard libraries available on Python notebooks in pause to make it easier to work with Python. So in your case, as you saw in the terminal, Pywikibot is installed, and it's also available as a Python library. So I'm going to make a section here. I'm going to call it Pywikibot. And here we're going to import Pywikibot, sorry. You can see it just run, didn't give me any problems. And Pywikibot has a bunch of classes that do things, right? The main classes are site for getting a project, like we did with the user config. For example, if we want to get test Wikipedia, which is what we were doing before, we create a site variable, and we use the pywikibot.site. This is the name of the class, the site class. And we use, as we did before, the language code and the family code. So if we run this one, it evaluated and didn't give me any errors, but I don't know what happened. So what I'm going to do now is just write the name of the variable so that I can print out, like we did before with the numbers. We wrote a number and it told us what the number was. Then if we write the name of a variable and we evaluate it, we're going to see what it is, right? In this case, it created an instance of the API site class with these parameters. So we know that it worked, which is what we're doing here. Everything working so far? Any questions about notebooks, doing some Python in the notebook, something like that? Okay. So the next class that is very important to Pywikibot's operation is the page class. We can see here how it takes makes a page variable, and using the Pywikibot.page class, it creates a class, and it gives it the site that we created before, and it gives it the name of the page. In my case, I'm going to create a page for my talk page. I'm going to test Wikipedia, and the title of my page is going to be my talk page. And then we're going to shift enter. And again, I want to see what it is. So I hit page, shift enter. It tells me what it created. So this is how it's different. Now with Python, you can start doing things with this object, right? For example, we can check if the page exists. So instead of running something in the command line, you can do this in code, right? Does the page exist? It goes to the wiki, checks if it exists, and it tells me the result, right? So for example, we could start writing like if page.exists, then print my talk page exists, and do whatever Python you wanna be doing. You can see it return true. Another thing that you can do is, for example, check on the text of the page, the content. So you do page.text. You can see here, this is a string, a Python string, and it has the wiki text content that we added before editing with our command line script. And we can also modify it. So we can say page.text is going to be, I'm going to modify this page now, and I'm going to say, let's see, it's going to be hello from Python in the workshop. A couple of new lines, and then I'm going to add the existing page.text below. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to check page.text again. You can see that now it has the text that I just added. And to save it to the wiki, we can call save. And that's going to be doing all the saving for us. Page.save. And I'm going to hit Shift Enter. It tells me that it was saved. And now if we go to my talk page, over here, and I reload, oh, it's here already. Hello from Python from the workshop. There we go. We used Python to get a web page on a wiki, checked the text, did something with the text using Python. Python has a bunch of tools to manipulate text. There's regular expressions. There's a bunch of string manipulation methods. So you can do everything that Python can do with strings. You can apply it to the wiki content. And then if we see the history, for example, to see what happened, we can see the edit over here. And the summary is just the version of Pywikibot they used. So when we're going to be doing edits, we were going to be doing things a little bit better. For example, if we want to provide a summary, page.save has parameters, and we're going to see now how to check the documentation of these objects and these methods and all of the Python code that Pywikibot has to know what we can do with the Python code. So we're going to stop right here before we go into documentation of the Python code. Did this work for people?
Well, one person couldn't save the page.
Can you share a link to your notebook to see what you were doing? I think that's a good use case for it.
Yeah, can you show again like how to share that link?
Yeah, it's up here. If you see the public link button.
Yeah, we have the link already.
Let's see this one, for example. I'm not sure what happened here. So
sorry, the earlier link was not a public link. This is the public link that I shared now.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Right. So let's see what's happening here. There's two, when you have an object in Python, there's two things that you can access with the dot operator over here. So for example, when you call dot something and you give it the parents, you're calling a function to do something. And when you're not using parents, what you're doing is accessing a variable that has some information in the object. So in the case of save is a method, not a variable. So you actually have to call it with parentheses, like this, like we did with exists. So once you call with parentheses, then it's actually going to do things. If you call it without parentheses, it's just returning you, hey, this is a method a method is the same name as of a function. A method is a function that is bound to an object. So that's why it's telling you this is a method in the page object. And the other one, does that make sense, Discover? Cool. And there was another question, non-Latin characters. Let's see this one. Yeah, so in this one, what you wrote up here is, let's see, so what you have in the cell is actually Python code. In Python code, if you want the text if you want this to be text, you have to wrap it in quotes like you did here, right? So if I want to have a page that has this title, for example, I can do, let me check on mine. I'm going to make the other page, let me call it page 2. It's going to be, this is the title. I make a page. Let me write the code. So like we did before, I think I have it on my sandbox. And then the title over here. So you can see I'm making a page with the title, and the title needs to be wrapped in quotes. You can actually use, in Python, you can use double quotes or single quotes as well. So if we click here now, Shift Enter, and we check on page 2, exists, Shift Enter. This is the page that we created before, so it does exist. And page 2.text. This is the wiki text that we added before. Does that make sense for the Unicode as well? You need to make the title of the page a string. So that's why it needs to be wrapped in quotes. Once you wrap it in quotes, Python 3 doesn't have a problem with Unicode strings. That's for sure.
So I think they were trying to make a heading out of this, like you did at the top of the.
Right. For that, you need to change the code block to Markdown. So once you have the cell selected in the dropdown you see over here on the top, instead of code, you have to put Markdown. So now that we have Markdown, you use the pound symbol and you paste the title of the page, and then Control-Enter or Shift-Enter, and you see the heading here.
Thank you.
Okay. Can someone tell me what this means? Just in case.
Yeah, what's that? Hello?
Welcome.
Welcome.
Okay.
Is it Vanakkam?
Cool. I think, can we stay a little bit over, or do you want me to wrap it up, or let me know how you want to proceed, Satip?
Well, some people, like we have someone saying we can continue. We can ask a few other
Just
people
in
as well.
case I saw mention of a group photo, maybe people have to leave, so I just want to be clear.
Yeah, we can take a group photo and then we can continue.
Mhm.
A little, I guess, like let's.
Should I stop presenting?
Yeah, I think, and then we can start again. Like we can take a group photo and then continue, because some people might might just want to leave because we are almost at the end of our time. So yeah, so everyone, please, if you would like to be in the group photo, you can turn on your cameras. Otherwise, we'll just have the images you have on your email IDs, I guess, if you're interested to be a part of this picture. So please turn on your cameras. And like while we wait, how's this experience has been like? Do you think you learned something new today? Like, or like where are you stuck? Please try and share that feedback as well, maybe. Jay, are you taking some pictures?
No, you can take.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I've taken one picture. Last call, if anyone wants to turn on their camera or the group photo. Then we'll have one more picture. Yes, we have another picture. We have another camera turned on. Anyone else? Okay, yeah. Took a couple of pictures. I think we can continue. And apologies for those who can't continue. Yeah, just because there's a lot more to learn about bots. We'll just keep this running for a few more minutes, I guess, like 10, 15. That's it.
Yeah, it's a very deep topics, right? Like just knowing all of the command line arguments and the scripts, it's a very long topic, and programming in Python is also a very big topic. So I think having the basics, having where documentation is, and getting to know each other is the most important thing that you can get from the workshop. So let me present the screen again, and we can see how to check documentation to know what the Python objects do. Let me know when you can see the screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Cool, thank you. So the next section is how to check documentation. It has the links to places to check the documentation. You know, the doc.wikimedia.org/Pywikibot. We will see that in a second. One of the things that you can do is in the notebook itself, there's a help function. And there you can check the documentation for the methods and also the objects. So let's check that. We want to see what text is, for example. So we can check help and then say page.text. And then, for example, this method doesn't have any documentation. So let's check save. You can see here the documentation for the save method. So it's in the module pywikibot.page. called save. These are the parameters over here. For example, there's a summary parameter that we can use. You saw our edit with the Python code before didn't have any summary. So maybe we want to provide a summary to be a good citizen of the wiki, and that people can know why the edit was made and that it was made by a bot. And there's the other parameters that you have when you edit a page, like if you want to watch the page, if the edit is a minor edit, if the edit was made by a bot, and etc., and some other parameters. This is documentation that comes from the Python code. So here it's just plain text. If you want to see a nicer version, we can also check on doc.wikimedia.org. So if we open that, as we saw before, we'll go to stable. And then instead of going to bot users, we're going to go to bot developers because we're using Python code right now to interact with Pywikibot. So here in the API reference, we can open that. And here, for example, if we want to check the page, it's at the top, I think, linked. Everything links with page, so it's over here, and site is over here. So let's open page, for example, and then here's the class, and it inherits from another class. And this is programming documentation, right? Because we're programming in Python, so that's what we have. And then if we search for save in a parentheses, we can see here the save method. Let's see, I don't know if it's this one. Save page after validating the content. So there's the API reference is very noisy. So it's not always the easiest to use. And we can see here in the notebook the documentation of the method exactly with the parameters that you can send. If you want to check what an object can do, you can also do that. It's going to give you a lot more text though, so it's going to be a little bit harder to read, but you can definitely do that. For example, if you want to check what you can do with a page, we can do help and give it just the page. So if we evaluate this one, because I want to know what I can do with the page, you can hear the name of the class, and here are the methods, and it's indented, right? So init is a method, get best claim is a method, set redirect target is a method. And let's see if we can see something interesting down here. Templates used on this page, for example. Let's see what else we can see. The backlinks, which page is linked to this page. If a bot can edit the page, it tells you how it determines that. So there's here in the page object, actually in the base page class as well, there's a bunch of things that you can access from the page, and it's going to transparently do the actions against the wiki. It's going to go to the wiki API and get the information for you in the Python code so that you can determine what you want to do and what you want to do with the page. So for example, change category, if you want to change one category to another one, clear the cache, coordinates, if it has coordinates in the wiki text from the geodata extension. So, here is a lot of information, right? We're not going to go through it all. It's as we said before, here's how to check what you can do with the page. For example, there's a contributors method. So we can do page.contributors. It's a method, so I have to call it. And you can see it gives me a banner with myself and the number of edits I've made to the page. So you would get here a list of the contributors that made edits to a page. So there's all sorts of useful information. Pywikibot tries to expose and mirror what the MediaWiki API allows you to do in a nice way for using it from Python. So the MediaWiki API is very, very extensive, and it aims to allow you to edit everything that you can do on the interface, that you can do it also programmatically from code. So Pywikibot has a big interface because you basically can do anything that you can do on a wiki manually, right? So any questions about documentation and checking the documentation in the code? So finally, in terms of Python, if I said before, the existing scripts are very useful. You can check the code in the Git repo. For example, if you open add text, you can see here the documentation as well for this is the script in this case. And you can see here real Python code using Pywikibot for doing things, right? It's defining a function, get text, and you know that here is creating a page and getting the page, and there's exceptions. Like there's real Python code doing things. For example, this function is for saving text. So you can see it uses page.save as we saw before, with summary and some other things. So the scripts are very useful for checking Python code doing real things and how they handle the error conditions. They're very solid as well. So they are a great reference. And if you want to check them in pause, as you can see in the documentation, we saw before the Pywikibot is in /srv/pause/pywb. And that Pywikibot installation is global for pause users, so you cannot change it. So what you have to do is copy one of the scripts to your local folder. For example, like this. Let's try it out very quickly. I'm going to open a new terminal. So in srv pause pwb, we have Pywikibot here. And if you want to get one of the scripts and run it locally, we have to copy it. In this case, imagine I want to change the add text script, the one that we used before. CP is for copy. So we copy the script that we have installed in the global Pywikibot into our home directory. The tilde is a shortcut for the home directory. And now if we ls, we can see here that we have the add text.py script. And now if we want to run it locally, we can do the same way we were running scripts before. But instead of using a global name, we can give it a path. So we can say /, because // is in the current folder. We want to use the home folder because we are in another folder. We can use the tilde. Both of them would work. And we have to add .py because it's the name of a file rather than the name of a script that's going to be checked. And if we run this, we get the same help that we had from the add text script. And then you can modify your Python script here, change it to do what you want to do. Maybe you want to remove the functionality it has and add your own and give it a new name, and use some of the functions that exist there. So it's also a good option for running the bots. Yeah, so finally, let me check the slides. Any questions about using existing Pywikibot scripts or the Python documentation or anything like that?
So we can copy I have a question straight up. So we can copy the script that you showed, and then where do we then run it? Do we run it in the terminal itself, or can we also use it somewhere else? Just going directly to Pywikibot? Is that or is it our scripts are only something that run here in terminal?
The scripts. So here. Let me see.
Yes, that's the script.
Yeah, so in the dashboard here, you see the file. So here's the script. So if you want to edit it and you don't want to edit it in the terminal, you can also open it here. And this is a Python editor as well. So you can see here, you can select the language. It does it based on the extension, so it's already detected it's Python. You have syntax highlighting everything here. So you can change it here, edit it here, and then you can open the terminal and just run the script to see what the output is, right? You can also create a new Python script and do the same things we were doing in the notebook, but in a text file here. So you would go here, say new text file, and then we would call it test.py for Python. Here we can do print hello. And here you can also import Pywikibot and all those things, as far as I know. So we're going to save. And then from the terminal, we can Python, I think I call it test, and it prints hello, right? So it's a full, it's like a computer, right? You can make files, you can run them, and the notebooks are a convenience for iterating through code and sharing.
Thank you. And we have another question. So someone is asking like how to just log in with Pywikibot on the local machine and not pause. Like if you can show that.
Yeah, for that the installation tutorial is very thorough. It depends. Things get a little bit more complex when you're going to do things locally. You're going to need to figure out how to run a command line program locally. If you are on Windows, there's the PowerShell command line, there's the CMD command line, and you can also install Git Bash. I like Git Bash because it gives you, let me search for it. So if you install Git for Windows, you get a Bash terminal that you can run, and it's very similar to the Linux terminal that you can run commands in. So for example, let me open a terminal here, and you get a terminal locally, like this, and here you can do ls and all of those things that we were doing before. For running Pywikibot locally, there's a different step, as we said before. You can hear in manual Pywikibot installation. One of the ways of installing Pywikibot is installing it by getting a folder of files. I personally like cloning the Git repository, but the easiest way is downloading a folder. You can see here, well, you have to install Python from the downloads. The steps are a little bit more involved. So you install Python, then you download Pywikibot from the stable branch. You get a zip file, you unzip it, and you have a folder. Then you open a command line and go into the folder with cd. And once you are in your Pywikibot folder, in the folder you extracted, then you configure it. For configuring Pywikibot, this is something that is done automatically in POS. If you're going to do it locally, here you have the instructions. You have to generate user files first. Once you run this script, that's going to generate the user config and other files. And then you edit that with your credentials, and you do pwpy.login. And as you can see, you have to use Python before you run pwv.py, like Jay said. And then once that's logged in, it's kind of the same. You can run the scripts in the command line, or you can edit them. Something that if you want to try something in Python locally, if you have a command line, let me open one. So if we have a command line over here, sorry, let me make it bigger. If you have a command line and you have Python, you can run the Python command or Python 3, depending on what you have. And this is what is called a REPL. It's an interactive session. It's similar to the notebook, but it's not the same. But here you can interactively try Python things. So you can do print, hello, world, and 1 + 2. So it's similar to the notebook, but it's text-based and locally. So you can try things as well. So you could import Pywikibot and try things with this from the command line as well. And later for running it, like if it's a little bit more of Python knowledge. There's pip for installing packages and things like that. So reading the documentation, following the commands, and reaching out for support in the Pywikibot community if you have any problems are the steps that I would recommend. How to run scheduled tasks with login enabled always. So for running, let's see, imagine you want to schedule tasks and have a long running bot. Let's look at that part, okay? I'm going to talk about the Wikimedia infrastructure that has toolkits, the platform as a service. So if you want to run a bot on the wikis, this is a good option. There's the tutorial. This is the tutorial that is linked in the Pywikibot page. If you click on running Pywikibot on Toolfort, that's the tutorial. Toolfort it's another thing. It's another environment. You need to learn how to get an account there, and log in, and how to use it. So we're not going to cover it right now. But once you have your Toolforge account, here's a tutorial that you can use. in ToolForge, Pywikibot is also installed for your convenience, and it tells you here how to configure it, how to generate the files so that you can log in. And then once you have something that you want to run, down here, let me make it bigger. I'm sorry if I'm going too fast, but we are kind of running out of time, and I wanted to give you just a quick look at this. For running a job periodically, you have some documentation here, right? So first you test submitting your job, and for your job, you make a bash file. So for that, you can log in and then run your Python script. And then you run it with this tool called JSub. Here are some examples of running a job. You can see here it's using these tools, JSub and JStart, and it's running, but if you actually look at the command, then it's running Python 3 with Pywikibot, with a script that someone created in a parameter. And then for scheduling the job, you use cron, which is a standard Linux tool. So you use cron, and here, these are the parameters for how often and how often your job is going to run. And this is the command for running your job that we run above to verify that it worked. So it's a little bit more involved. There's documentation, and documentation should be updated. If there are any problems with the documentation, we can reach out in the cloud channel, for example, in IRC, or in the cloud mailing list, Wikimedia mailing list. We can give you some help if you're having trouble with ToolForge. You can also run these in some other system. You can do, schedule the task. If you have a Linux machine or a Linux server, you can schedule that manually. As I said, pause computers turn off. So
how long the login is valid? So if I spin up a server on DigitalOcean, I do login on time, and I made a scheduled task. So every day I have to go there and log in, or every once in 3 months I have to do login, or if the login one time is enough?
I don't think the expiry is short. I think the logins get expired when there are some security problems or things like that. But generally, I don't think they expire. So if you log in once, it should remain logged in for a very long time.
Okay.
I don't know exactly, so that's definitely something to check.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We have another question. Can we schedule something on pause too?
Yeah, pause ends up shutting down your server automatically after a period of time. So if you are using it manually and you are on the web UI, it's going to remain open. But once you leave it alone, after some time, it's going to shut off, because it's not a computer on the net. For that, there's ToolForge, which is always on and always running. If you want to schedule something in pause, you can schedule something, but you have to be around and doing things with it. So at some point, it's going to shut down. So that's why you don't want to run persistent jobs in pause. For example, here, if we check the pause documentation, which is hopefully it's well written and understandable, you can see here is pause right for your task. So you can learn about when pause is a good option and when it isn't. This is what Jupyter notebooks are. And let me see. Should you use notebooks for your project? Yes, no. And here are some other options of when to do things, where to do things. Wikimedia Cloud Services has a bunch of different tools and infrastructure for technical contributors. So that's also worth digging into. It's free for working with Wikimedia projects, and it's intended to help the wikis and the volunteers and the technical contributors do useful things.
Is Pywikibot can edit wiki data too?
Yes. Yes, there are scripts. If we check scripts, for example, the canonical scripts are very, very useful. I really recommend digging into those. There's a Wikidata section, for example. And here you have some of the Python scripts for doing things in Wikidata. Let me see. There was a question about commons. So about the question about commons and pause, is that using Pywikibot, or is it using a custom script, or?
I tried to make changes in audio file at Commons, but unable to change I tried by a Pywikibot library. They told that that is not possible by Pywikibot. They have to develop, I think.
I mean, as far as I can see, the edit that is linked on that comment is just a wiki text edit. So you should definitely be able to change wiki text from Pywikibot like we did before. If you're having problems, I would encourage you to make a notebook with the steps that you're doing, and then get the public link, and then you can open a task in Fabricator with the Pywikibot tag and say, hey, here's a public notebook. This is what I was doing, and this is the errors that I'm getting. And then people will give you assistance. You can also try the mailing list as well. So I don't think the Commons help desk is very technical, so maybe it's better to bring that question to the technical spaces, so the Pywikibot mailing list or the Fabricator.
Thank you, I will.
Not very sure when looking at it.
See, middle of the page, there is a.
Yeah.
I post a link, audio file link at the chat box. There is option to change the structural data or a file information, that is caption. In the middle of above the summary.
Yeah, I think the caption, that caption is not stored as.
There is also a structural data tab also.
So if you click on edit, that caption is not stored there. I think that's going to be a problem.
Right. So this is okay. So this is I know what's happening here. The captions is part of the structured data additions that happened lately. Structured data on Commons is not stored on the wiki text. It's stored so pages on MediaWiki now have a structured data fields. So they have fields with key and value, and maybe that's not still exposed in Pywikibot. So it may be worth digging into Fabricator to look at structured data support in Pywikibot. Until that is done, then Pywikibot won't have the ability to edit structured data.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when you say structured data over here and all of that, that's not on the wiki text.
It means that it is a plugin. The information in that page, the information of the structured data in that file is stored by a plugin. Is it?
It's stored. It's a combination of functionality that was added to MediaWiki core, but also an extension. So it's the extension provides the Commons UI, and MediaWiki core provides where the information is stored.
Okay.
So what may be the best way to edit it automatically using any bot, or is there any way to automate this editing?
Yeah, I'm sure there's likely an API that you can use. That would be dealing with the MediaWiki API, but I'm not sure. So I think the best way to do that is to open Fabricator tasks asking for this. I'm not sure exactly who's handling this. There's a structured data team in the Wikimedia Foundation, so maybe figure out where that team has a mailing list or a top page, or on Fabricator, if they have a Fabricator tag, there's a structured data team, I think it's called. So maybe you can ask them, hey, I want to edit captions and comments via the API. Is there an API? Or figure out how that's done on Pywikibot. You can come back to questions. Let's just finish up the slides. So that's the tutorial for running a bot continuously on free Wikimedia infrastructure. Of course, you can run it, if you have the DigitalOcean instance, you can run it with cron yourself there, however you please. And then finally, just a few considerations, something to keep in mind if you're going to write a bot. A few questions that you need to answer and take into account. Will the bot be manually assisted or fully automated? Depending on what you're going to do, you may want to have human intervention. Bots can make a lot of edits, or maybe you want to do it fully automated. So you can create maybe a web UI, a web interface where people can click and actually do the bot do things rather than running it on a schedule. There's many tools like that in Toolkits, for example. Are you going to do it alone, or are you going to try to help find help from others? Having co-maintainers is always very useful. If there's a problem with your bot and you have other people that can look into it and you're maintaining the bot together, it's a great way to do things as well for the longevity of the bot and the useful tools on the wiki. Then this is an encouragement. Will the bot's requests, edits, or other actions be logged? Usually, if you see the bots on the bigger wikis, it is very useful to log what the bot has been doing. And many bots do it on a wiki page. They have in the user page you create an account for the bot, and on the user page for the bot, you link to a sub page where you have the actions of the bot. So when you're doing actions with your bot, then you add text to that log page of what the bot was doing. So that if someone is wondering, hey, what is this bot doing? Or you are wondering because you don't know what the bot was doing, you just go to the wiki page from the browser and you can see what your bot was up to. It's very useful to keep track of what the bot was doing. You can also log to log files locally. Toolforge, when you run things on a job in the grid, it puts the log output on a local file system. So you can actually check those log files if you can see what your bot was doing. But I think it's very important when you have an automated bot, it's very important to know what it's doing. So I would encourage you to think about how, when you run a job, figuring out where the logs are, and if you're going to have it running publicly and it's going to be more useful to other people, then actually log to a wiki page so other editors and other maintainers can look at this. And then, as we saw before, how will it be written and run? If it's going to be in Python with Pywikibot, there's people that write automated tasks with JavaScript as an extension, as a gadget as well, MediaWiki gadget, and which framework or programming language you're going to use. And then is it going to be running on your computer? Like maybe you have your computer on all the time, so you can just schedule it periodically there. Or are you going to have it on a remote server like Toolforge, for example? And finally, how are other editors or maintainers going to operate the bot? Are they going to be able to start it or stop it? Like imagine you're having a problem, you're not available. Is there someone else that can stop the bot? There's something they call when a bot goes rogue. It's a bot starting to do a lot of edits of something that it wasn't supposed to happen. So some bots, if you check on the wikis, have a link to a URL where you can stop the actions of the bot. And you can do that like when you have a web server, for example, you can expose an endpoint where if that endpoint gets hit, you stop the bot and you send an email to yourself, for example, to be able to stop the bot if it goes wrong in a wiki. As you can see, like these things can be editing thousands of pages in a very, very, very short amount of time. So it's always useful to have safeguards in case things go wrong, because sometimes things go wrong. And that's the end. I'm happy to answer any other question if I can help. There's a vast variety of things that can be done, and our projects are very big, and tools and communities are very big. So I definitely don't know anything. I do know usually where to point you to ask questions to the people that will know. So I'm happy to stay, answer any questions, and direct you to anywhere that may be useful for your endeavors.
Yeah, any final questions? We're almost half an hour above our time.
I would like to thank you.
Yeah, I have a request. Maybe next time we should plan for a session on APIs. So how to get the MediaWiki APIs and how to use them when we are writing custom program.
Mm-hmm.
Because the API tutorials are not user-friendly, and understanding the tutorial page itself needs a lot of training. So it will help you sometime if you can help on how to explore the MediaWiki APIs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Srini. I've noted it down, and I'll pass it on to the rest of the team, and hopefully we'll organize a session on MediaWiki APIs soon.
Any other questions? Thank you. Nice Spanish. Yeah, it's very important to know. You're not alone. There's as you can see, there was a group of people here that were interested in these topics, and there's existing communities everywhere that can also help you. So definitely use the support channels, experiment, and also be careful when running automated tasks. They can make a mess very, very quickly. So
you can, I've shared the link to the mailing list, like where you can find the mailing list, the IRC, and yeah, you can keep engaged, keep keep in touch with the Pywikibot community. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for attending the session, and thank you so much, Joaquin, for this really informative session.
Yeah, my pleasure. I will send the organizers the links to the slides once I have them published. I'm going to see if I can print them to a PDF as well. And they have some nice links to go around. And I don't think the link to my notebook is particularly useful, but maybe I'll publish that and put it there too. And yeah, if you have any questions about the things that we talked on the workshop as well, feel free to post a message on the talk page of the workshop, or just send me an email. I'll give that information to the organizers as well, or my talk page.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Great. Have a nice day. Night. Evening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, class. Thanks for the great session. So we learned a lot of things.
Yes. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
But thanks for the organizer too.
Bye.
Good to have sessions on technical side.